As we move into our study of the Epistle of James, I want to begin by reminding you that this series is entitled Maturing in the Faith, and that for good reason. As you're going to see today in this text, that theme resounds from the very beginning as we venture into the study of James chapter 1, verses 2 through 8. And we'll be considering the topic today, testing leads to a maturing faith. Let's take a look at the scripture now. James 1, verses 2 through 8 tells us, "Consider it a great joy, my brothers, whenever you experience various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance. But endurance must do its complete work so that you may be mature and complete, lacking nothing. Now, if any of you lacks wisdom, he should ask God, who gives to all generously and without criticizing, and it will be given to him. But let him ask in faith without doubting, for the doubter is like the surging sea driven and tossed by the wind. That person should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. An indecisive man is unstable in all his ways." In his book entitled Destiny, Pastor David Gibson wrote these words, "There is one undivided God. The Lord our God is one. And because God is like that, then he must be approached and worshiped by one undivided person. All your heart, all your soul, all your strength. In other words, all of you. Every single bit. God is not pulled in different directions, so neither should we be in our worship of him." One of the marks of spiritual maturity is the ability to worship God with an undivided heart. The way that we grow to such maturity, as our text is telling us, is by persevering or enduring through the trials. Now, this term trials indicates, the difficulties and the troubles of life that really should be expected in this fallen world that we're living in. Notice that the scripture does not say if they happen, rather it clearly tells us whenever they happen. But trials are not merely the bad stuff that happens as we tend to identify them as, but rather they can also be tests that God sends for the simple purpose of refining us as well as burning away the impurities in our hearts and lives. The phrase mature and complete, lacking nothing, indicates a spiritual wholeness or a completeness. This purpose is the only reason we can consider the process to be great joy, or as another translation calls it, pure joy. Now, while this may not necessarily be something that we anticipate or look forward to happening, the promise we are given is that we do not have to persevere or endure on our own, that God will be with us. He goes on to say if we lack wisdom about how to do so, the scripture tells us to ask God and he will answer. And even more so, he will carry it out generously and without criticizing, meaning that there is no shame in our asking. The key to this prayer is a faith that has great expectation attached to it. Keep in mind that faith is not a magic key. The point that James is making is that prayers asking for God's will to be done in our lives will always receive a yes answer. Let me repeat that for you. James is making this point that prayers asking for God's will to be done in our lives, not our will, not our longings, not our desire, but the will of God to be carried out in our lives is always going to receive a yes answer. To think otherwise is to be indecisive or unstable or to have divided loyalties, which is really a form of hypocrisy. James tells us that when we respond to trials like the surging sea that's driven and tossed by the wind, that we are responding immaturely, which culminates in really missing out on the blessings that standing firm in the faith have to offer. Remember that James started this passage out by telling us to consider it a great joy, my brothers, whenever you experience various trials. Now, such a statement perhaps leaves you wondering how I can find joy in the trials and tribulations I'm passing through, that I'm suffering through. Perhaps wondering if it is even possible to experience joy amid whatever you may be going through right now. In all certainty, difficulties are difficult to say the least. Trials are painful. And whatever it may be for you today, finding joy may be the furthest thing from you. Yet, in view of eternity, in view of what God is working in and through you for that eternal purpose, there, my friend, is a reason for joy. Simply knowing that God promises to work through these things in your life creates a reason for joy to spring up in your heart and your life. The fact is, God is doing something good, even when you don't yet see it or feel it. And to top it all off, God grants you eyes of faith to endure as you see through the trials and into his loving purpose for it all. So hang on. Trust God. Know that it is all working out for your good according to his perfect plan and his perfect purpose. Know for certain that your testing is leading to a maturing faith within you. Until next time.